Living a Sensational Life. The book that we're exploring and we're reading through this month is pretty thick. And of course, we're going to use it next month as well. So if you haven't picked it up yet, go ahead and pick up the book, because we're actually going to be with it for a little bit. It's The Thought Exchange by David Freeman. And the thing that he talks about that's so intriguing to me is this idea on the front cover: overcoming our resistance to living a sensational life. Now, when I first heard about the book and when I first saw he's got a little movie attached to it, it was kind of coined, I think I told you a little bit about it. It was The Secret Behind the Secret. And I'm like, wow, that's catchy. You know, just totally got me in there, reeled me right in. I want to know the secret behind the secret. And as I began to read the book and see the movie and begin to work with these ideas and his read through his story and read through some of the things that he has actually done in groups, I was particularly intrigued with a group setting that he talked about. And he actually talks about simply having some conversations with folks about what's not working in your life and giving the person the floor. You have, 3 minutes to talk about what's not working in your life. So here's a common one. Oh my goodness. There's 43 cents in my bank account. The mortgage is due, or the rent is due, or the car note, or the car broke down again. There's 43 cents in the bank, or 45, whatever it is. I mean, very, very common. People talk about lack and limitation all the time. And in his particular circle and in this particular group that he started working with, he was entertaining this idea of a thought exchange. And that thought exchange was simply having the person talk about their experience and what they were experiencing, and okay, now breathe. Oh, okay, there it is, it's out. Bleh. Now, the question that was posed was, what must you be thinking in order for you to have that experience? Last week, we talked about mirror, mirror on the wall. I told the story about the echo and talked about life. And an echo simply gives back to you exactly with the same intonation everything that you give it. It doesn't change it around. It doesn't, give it a different meaning. The echo simply gives you back that which is already put into it. Life. Mirror, the reflection. Therefore, if this is the experience that this individual is having, what are the thoughts that are producing this experience? And then he made up this thing about having a store called the Thought Exchange Store. And there you would have, all these great thoughts that you can have instead of the thoughts you're currently having. So if I'm having thoughts of money don't grow on trees, what do you think? I'm Rockefeller? Do you think we were born wealthy? Like, I work hard for the money. Like, I'm only making minimum wage, or I work for a nonprofit, or whatever the thoughts are, or there's never enough. No matter what I do, it's so hard to save. Whatever those thoughts are, he makes up this idea that we can take those thoughts, jot them down, and go into this store and exchange the thought. Excuse me, clerk, this thought is no longer working for me. I'd like a new one, please. Wow. Exactly. And that you can then pick from an array of beautiful thoughts, like, my life is abundant. Right where I am, God is. The life of God is abundance. So therefore, I must be abundant. I am rich. I am wealthy. Life is always working together for my good. Life is conspiring for my good. I mean, there are a gazillion thoughts that you can exchange. These thoughts that are no longer working for you, you can just go in and exchange them. No harm, no foul. You don't have to pay extra for it at all. And he found that as a result of doing this for a number of years and working with folks, is that some of these thoughts that were exchanged, they began to make a difference in the lives of the people that he was in circle with. But inevitably, there were some things and some people who just, no matter how much they tried to think and affirm and pray and do whatever, that somehow it never caught. It never worked. And he was wondering and trying to figure out why. What is it? You know, the law of attraction says that which you focus on, you get. That which you think about, you bring about. Same thing then on the opposite, that which you resist persists because you're constantly thinking about it, so you're bringing it about. So the secret behind the secret is this idea that even though we have exchanged the thought for a new thought, and especially because we come to New Thought Community, and now that we've changed and accepted this thought, my life is that life that God is. Or I'm a great singer, I'm going to be a star one day. Whatever maybe some of your dreams were that maybe got shot down and shattered, that somehow or another, there is a physical sensation that begins to happen in our body temple that creates a discomfort. Or at least we label it as a discomfort when they are simply body sensations. So here's what I mean. He talks about his own story of wanting to live a fuller life. And at 20 years old, he recognized that he couldn't go into theaters, subways, ride the bus, go out in public much. And he recognized that his life was becoming very small and cocooned. So there's the problem. I can't go out in theater, in the public, can't go in the subways, blah, 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 blah. So what must he be thinking? Oh, I must be thinking that there's something fearful or afraid, that I must be afraid of something, or that something bad is going to happen to me. So he exchanged the thought, simply, right? I walk freely into the subways and sit next to strangers. I participate in the theater. I go and I sit and I watch a great play or a great musical. However, every time he attempted to do so, he was met by these body sensations that were so debilitating in his mind. But when he really examined them for a moment, he began to describe them. What are the body sensations? What's happening within me that prevents me from actually going out and doing that which I love, doing that which I want to achieve? And he recognized that by simply calling a thing, as my friend Ian Van Zandt would say, you got to call a thing. So the body sensations were cold wrist, racy heart, maybe even just, sweat. But he labeled that a panic attack. And for most of us, when we go into strange places, our heart may race, we may get sweaty palms or cold wrists, we may begin to sweat profusely, we may get the butterflies in the stomach, we may have a nervous stomach, whatever it is. He simply said, this is what it is physically. Here's how this sensation shows up in my body. So now he's exchanged the thought. I freely go on the subway, I freely go into the theaters, I freely walk around the streets of New York because I am free. And yet every time he stepped out of the door, all of this stuff would start to happen. Now, in some circles, people would say to him, well, honey, if it doesn't feel good, don't do it. If it doesn't feel good, then at all costs, prevent that feeling from happening. And so the mind develops a thought exchange, the reverse. I can't go out there. I can't go on the train. I can't go on the bus. I can't go out in public. I can't go to the theater. I can't do this. This affirmation, this thing that people tell me, the secret. I mean, I try having the thoughts, but as soon as I try to do it, the body says, eh. And that's the rub. That sometimes we believe that because we're having these great thoughts and these great visions and these great affirmations about who we are and who we're going to be, but yet we relate the body sensations to something negative. And we think that it means to stop doing it. And if we just label a thing and just say it's just a body sensation, and move through that body sensation, the body sensations are still going to happen. However, the more we push through and continue to know our good, continue to know our freedom, continue to know our truth, those body sensations will also no longer mean something negative. They just are. Here's a great example of that. I think it's cruel, but some people, to train their dogs to stay in their yard, use an electric fence. The theory behind electric fence is you put a collar on your dog, and then you lay this wire around the perimeters. Now, as the dog, if this is my perimeter, I'm a Great Dane. As I get to the perimeter, if I'm this dog, I begin to feel a sensation because the collar is now shocking me. The closer I get, the higher the shock gets. So, do I label that as wrong or bad? Or is that just a body sensation? Do I keep my eye on the prize on the other side, which is freedom? From my cruel owners who put this collar on me? Or do I stay within the parameters because I don't want to go through the shock? There's an actor, or even me as a performer on stage, or someone who comes up on the stage. Right before places, everybody. Places, people, places. The butterflies. Do I remember my lines? The children. Like, we're getting ready to perform. I want to do a good job. The butterflies. I begin to feel a little bit nervous. My hands get sweaty and clammy. People are so afraid of public speaking all the time. And it's not necessarily stage fright. The thing is am I willing to go through the body sensations to get to the other side, which is where the freedom lies, and begin to relabel these body sensations from something that's negative to something that just is? We've all had it. We've all had it. So do I push through? They call places, and it's showtime. Boom, there goes the lights out. Boom, the show begins. Am I the one who stays backstage because I'm so blocked by that shock, by those body sensations? Or as a performer, a public speaker, someone in the public eye, do I just label the thing a thing and move through it? What happens for many of us who turn away from our new thought, living, and way of being is that we allow these body sensations to debilitate us to the degree that we no longer go for that which is the truth of who we are. When simply on the other side of that is our freedom. I know many dogs who have broken out and said, forget this. They're willing, their desire to experience freedom is higher than their desire to stay in mediocrity and live a miserable life. Is that making some sense? Okay. So, what I like that he says in the book is that just because we have this way of life and this teaching, it doesn't mean that the sensations are going to stop. But what it does mean is through our prayer, through our meditation, through our affirmations, through continuing to do our spiritual practice, as we go through the sensations that we have called negative or that we think are debilitating, that they no longer seem to have the grip or the power or the sting that they had before. It just simply is. And we no longer label it as something scary or negative. Think about this for a moment. Little kids, sometimes we got to take them to the supermarket. Sometimes we got to take them to places where there's a long line. And we get tired of carrying them. They get heavy. We put them down. But we're waiting and waiting and waiting. And what happens to them? They get restless. Their little legs can't really hold on. They get, and in some cases, they can be so vocal and they don't know what to do with this energetic that's in their body. They don't know yet how to say, my feet hurt, my legs are tired, my knees right here, like I want to sit down. When they do this. Unless they can begin to use their words. But sometimes parents or guardians, they'll be like, stay still. Stay still. So now, not only have they been feeling this stuff and they don't know what to do with it or how to speak of it, but now, parent, mom, aka God, our provider, the one who feeds us and clothes us and shelters us and takes care of us, is now so upset with us and my behavior that I get a spanking. So I'm going to do whatever it is that I can now. My lesson as a 2-year-old, as a 3-year-old, is to do whatever I can to avoid the body sensations so that I'm not getting spanked and annoying my parent, my guardian, my provider. And yet that's a lesson that we learn, that we carry throughout life, unbeknownst to ourselves. So, of course, fast forward to adult. Here you are now, and there's a great concert or a great musical or something that you enjoy, and the tickets are going on sale. Tickets are going on sale at 5 o'clock. And you get there, and there is a line wrapped around the corner. What do you say? What do you do? Immediately the thought may come, I ain't waiting in that line. That's just too much trouble. Oh well. Because the body and the mind will now, instead, you will do anything to avoid the sensation. The sensation of, my legs, my feet, and the remembrance now of being spanked and being annoying to your parent. So something that happened at 2 or 3 is now affecting the 20-year-old, the 30-year-old, the 40-year-old, the 50-year-old, so forth, and whatnot. We're being informed by a 2-year-old. And that's where we have the work to do. Because the purpose of knowing the secret behind the secret is that as we go through the sensations, as we allow ourselves to recognize that these are just body sensations, and just label the thing the thing. We don't have to label it negative. We don't even have to label it positive. It's just a body sensation. It's just what the body is experiencing in that moment. As we know this about ourselves and as we begin to become aware of it a little bit more, we may have not even been aware of it until now. That maybe that is the missing link that prevents us from truly using the law of attraction, from truly experiencing the great life that we know within us is ours to live. That when we begin to see it in this way and begin to recognize it, that our prayer work, that our meditation work can be around correcting this idea and belief that there's something wrong with the way my body is feeling or the sensations that I'm having. Here's a great example. My eyes are dilated. I'm breathing like shallow, like this, or heavy breathing, deep, heavy breathing. My heart is pounding. I'm sweating. What am I experiencing? I love the answers. Funny, I heard more fear, I heard one excitement. We could be experiencing fear or pleasure. You know what I'm talking about. Shallow breathing, the dilated eyes. We could be experiencing fear or pleasure. It's the same exact feeling. It's the same exact body sensation, and yet one is like, oh yeah, I like that. But it's the same exact body sensation when we're going through something that we might think is a little more fearful. But when we simply call a thing, my heart is racing. My palms are sweaty. I have shallow breathing. And keep my eye on that prize, I can get through that fence, invisible fence, that has been doing these little body sensations, where in the past I've stopped at that and said, oh no, this, I've labeled it as this don't feel good. So I retreat. Whereas if we just label it what it is, it's racy heart, sweaty palms. I remember at one point, I had a little eye twitch. And because my idea about an eye twitch was like, that's embarrassing, because I'm looking at somebody and my eyes like, all twitchy. But it's just an eye twitch. But I had made up so much stuff about what an eye twitch meant and attached such negativity to it that I would avoid eye twitching or situations that if I was face to face with you and talking to you about something difficult or interesting and my eye began to twitch, even though we were getting somewhere and talking and really having a great conversation, I'd stop it. I'd stop the conversation, excuse me, I have to go, and I'd leave. So that body sensation prevented me from getting closer relationships, from having deeper and meaningful conversations, because I was always so preoccupied with this body sensation instead of just, oh yeah, it's just my eye twitching. It's not a big deal. And still making the connections. So, the more we experience the body sensations, the more we allow ourselves to go through the body sensations, the more we courageously go forward through the body sensations, they will continue to happen, but they will mean less and less of what they've meant in the past. And it will just be something that happens because it's part of our physical makeup. As many times as we've had performers and people, believe me, they will tell you, that every time they go on stage, they still get the butterflies, but half the time they don't even notice it anymore. Or half of the time, it doesn't mean what it meant, like the first time. And we begin through our spiritual practice, through our meditation, through our prayer, to really use a fine-tooth comb with what's happening in our lives and stick to our affirmations and also get through the body sensation so that we actually are living this, what you probably thought I was going to talk about, living this sensational life, like it's the bomb, woohoo! And that's how we get to that kind of sensational life. That like bigger than life, bigger than lights, like that big, woohoo, I have arrived. It's because we have to, and we get to, if we choose to, go through the sensational living of the body temple, and simply call a thing, and not have it mean, I can't, I won't, I'll avoid it at any cost. Does that make sense? Yeah. That's a lot to chew on. Somebody once asked me, how do you eat an elephant? And I don't. They said one bite at a time, right? It seems like this big thing. And I think that sometimes when we take on big ideas like this, we just take a little chunk of it. And so as we go into our quiet time right now, with just this little piece, this little idea of maybe becoming aware of our body sensations and how sometimes we make our affirmations and we have our goals of what we want to do and experience. Maybe we can just set our intention now to simply become aware of the places where our body has these sensations and we may not be aware that we're preventing those feelings at all costs, which then means that we backtrack into what we don't want instead of what we do want. So take a breath with me. And just simply settle in. Right here, all we're going to simply do is dwell in infinite possibility. Meaning that there's been something welling up within us that we want to experience, that we want to live out, that we want to have and hold. And there it lies, right there, in this realm of infinite possibility. It's also known as the unmanifest world. And even though we see it with our mind's eye, it hasn't necessarily been made manifest in the physical realm. So we ask ourselves, what must I be thinking for that to become manifested in, through, and as my life? We walk over to it. We step in its space where it and I are one, where you are in the same, occupying the same space as it. It's almost like you're trying it on for size. What must I be thinking in order for this to be made manifest? Be with that for a few minutes.